All right. Hi, everyone. Good morning, and welcome to this webinar for TN Higher Ed on the Hill. My name is Sarah Marrero, and I'm the coordinator of College Access Communications here at the Tennessee Higher Education Commission. And I'm super excited to be joined by some colleagues today to talk about higher education on the Hill. So today we're going to go through and we're going to talk about some of Tennessee's latest financial aid developments, some state-funded program updates, some legislative updates and policy changes, and then some helpful strategies for both students and college access professionals and support as we approach the fall semester. So this is the part of the year where everything gets going really quickly, and there's a lot to get done to make sure that our students are ready to start classes this fall. So I'm really excited today to be joined by Tim Phelps, who's the Senior Director for Grant and Scholarship Programs with TSAC, and also Jason C., who's our Senior Director of Outreach. So gentlemen, we'll go ahead and get started here with some legislative updates.
Sarah, happy Friday.
Yes, happy Friday.
Guys, good morning. As always, happy Friday to everyone. It's good to have my partner in crime beside me, Tim Phelps, to talk about and do this. This has become an annual thing.
I was going to say the same thing.
It's become an annual thing.
Become an annual thing, yeah.
Which is good. Sarah, here's what we're going to do, just because you know this, here at the office, we're on Wi-Fi, but sometimes to conserve bandwidth, I'm going to turn our video off just while we're doing the slides. Sure. And I will get Tim going here momentarily. How about that?
That sounds great.
Share. All right, Tim,
all right,
go for it.
Thanks, Jason. Thanks, Sarah. Appreciate everyone being on the call today. And so I did want to take just a moment and say, and I'm sure Jason and Sarah share this sentiment, but send out our thoughts and prayers to those that were affected by the storms and the tornadoes on Wednesday. So we do hope everyone made it through there safe, not too much impact to those that are here, and for those that, like I said, were impacted, sending out our thoughts and prayers to them. So our first bill is Senate Bill 2061, House Bill 1803, which changes the Tennessee Promise scholarship enrollment requirement from the initial fall semester following high school graduation to no later than the fall semester after high school graduation. And what this allows students to do is to enroll at an eligible 2-year or 4-year institution for the summer term for those that want to do that. These students, they're still required to complete all of the necessary program requirements. You're talking about the Tennessee Promise application, the FAFSA, the community service, et cetera, to receive the award during that summer term. So specifically for students enrolling this summer for the summer term this year, they'll be required to complete the 23-24 FAFSA by a May 15th deadline. They will also have to complete an additional 8 hours of community service by July 1st. Essentially, or at least in summary, this won't have any impact on students who enroll in the summer at a TCAT. That process has been in place for a few years now, but this is probably the biggest piece of legislation that we have that has passed this session.
Yeah. No, Tim, thank you. And guys, I think that was well laid out by Tim as always, but just a couple things. I mean, the biggest thing there is the expansion for summer enrollment, specifically for those 2-year, 4-year associate programs. So for the class of 2024, our students, have the option to start as early as quote June and July in order to begin their promised journey. But as a reminder, that 23-24 FAFSA, which is typically used for the summer term, must be completed. And again, May 15th is its deadline, in addition to other requirements. So no, that's good. Hey, Sarah, just because of the view, if you want to jump in and ask any question that needs to be asked, by all means do that, okay?
Sure, absolutely. Did you see the question from Bridget? You want me to read it to you?
I didn't. So Sarah, if you will, verbally say it.
Sure, absolutely. So Bridget asked, in the communication from Mallory Miskiko, I might be mispronouncing that name, yesterday, the programs that were eligible for summer were very specific, like some 5-week sessions. So she's asking, was the impact of student success for a condensed summer session for a first-time college freshman considered there?
Ooh. Let me go back.
Good question.
That is a good question.
Yeah, and one thing that I'll add, Jason, is that so just for consistency across our state aid programs, and this, I think it may touch on what you were saying about when the student enrolls. So for purposes of our Tennessee Student Assistance Award, our state need-based grant, we do require that the majority of the days for the program fall essentially within, and actually, let me back up. So this bill takes effect essentially July 1. So it starts with the 24-25 academic year, if you will. So we're saying that a majority of those days have to fall after July 1 in order for a student to qualify. So if a student is taking, say, that summer that in a short summer term that you mentioned in June and July, that may not necessarily qualify for the award
because it would be
because
before.
It's prior to the effective date of the legislation. So yeah.
So Sarah, you know this from last week, and guys, forgive me if there is a gray blob square on the
There's
screen.
no
I
gray blob.
apologize.
I'm happy to report no gray blob.
Oh, good. Bridget, we're going back to this one. You know, this is like some of the semantics that happens at times with the stuff. So I think in theory,
unintended consequences, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm having Tim read this as well.
Bridget, I would say no, that really wasn't a consideration. It really, the impetus behind the bill is that we've always interpreted the original legislation to say that, hey, you can't use it. If you're attending a 2-year or 4-year institution, you can't use it until that initial fall semester after graduation. So by adding in that no later than language, we said, okay, that opens it up to the summer. So really that was essentially the impetus behind the bill more than anything. And like Jason said, sometimes there are things that happen that may not necessarily be in tune with what a specific student may be facing or a specific situation. But the way that we've interpreted that is that bill doesn't take effect until July 1, and we're going to pay for a course that the majority of those days are, or courses, majority of those days that occur after the July 1.
So with that, Tim, another question for us. Do the courses also have to start after July 1st? We had somebody else ask a question in here. So it did have to start after July 1st since that's when the bill goes into effect, or is it that they can't start to request payments for Tennessee Promise until after July 1st?
Yeah, and great question. So the courses do not have to start after July 1, but the majority of the days of the courses, in keeping with how we administer our TSA program, have to occur after July 1. So
got it. Okay, thank you.
And Sarah, this is us pausing just as we look at both Zoe's and Bridget's comments as well. So
no, you're totally fine.
Bridget, thank you for sharing the link from the Chiefs site. Tim, as always, and we'll move on, maybe the next one. Guys, as always, if like questions like this, feel free, you'll get Tim's contact information here in a second. By all means, like let's pepper us with questions here now, and then after the fact, that might take us a little bit more research.
Yeah.
I was going to use the very astute term noodling over. So yeah.
I love the term noodling.
Yeah,
yes.
Yeah. But no, keep them.
We
Keep them
can
coming.
noodle. We can noodle. So
all right, next.
All right, next one. So Senate Bill 833, House Bill 869 creates essentially two GPAs for separate GPAs for dual enrollment students, one at 2-year, 4-year institutions, and then one at TCATs. And essentially what this bill does is allow a student to maintain eligibility. If a student who is more geared, if you will, to take courses at a 2-year or 4-year institution, but they want to try courses at a TCAT. Currently, the way the program is outlined in statute, there's only one GPA for that student. And if that student said, want to try a course at a TCAT or courses and they don't do well, well, they permanently lose eligibility for the award. This bill says, hey, we're going to assign you a GPA at a TCAT. We're going to assign you a GPA at a 2-year, 4-year institution. If you happen to take courses at a TCAT or vice versa, and you don't do so well, you're still going to maintain eligibility at the other institution type. Now, I will point out, as it says there, the effective date of this bill is July 1, 2025. Couple of reasons for that. We need to get our ducks in a row to allow our system, the FAST system, to handle 2 different GPAs, but also allow the institutions, the community colleges, post-secondary institutions, allow them to make any necessary program changes as well. So this will be something that you'll hear about. I will say we've had multiple conversations about this legislation. It seems like it's a pretty straightforward process, but when you start noodling or you start digging into some of the other potential questions or issues that we run into, then it opens up Pandora's box. But at this point, it's fairly straightforward. I'm sure that, like I said, we'll run into some questions or issues as we get further down the line.
Yeah. And Tim, this is one, and again, well described there. But guys, remember, dual enrollment grant, our students, our high school students now, 9th and 10th grade, they can take advantage of TCAT dual enrollment. Whereas our 11th and 12th graders, that's when they can begin taking the 2-year, 4-year dual enrollment in addition to TCAT dual enrollment as well. And that being said, this is, unintended consequences, right? We've now worked with some students in 9th or 10th grade that took that TCAT dual enrollment class. They didn't do as well as we would have liked. And in theory, that then caused them to lose dual enrollment. This bill would then still allow them, once it becomes effective July 1st, 2025, this would then allow those students to then, their junior, senior year, take dual enrollment at a 2-year, 4 years college.
Potentially.
Yeah.
So again, sorry to noodle.
No, you're good.
Here,
you're good.
One, and I mentioned we were having several conversations about this. Given that this bill is effective July 1, 2025, and I equated essentially to our advanced degree, using the hope for an advanced degree. If you essentially, for the hope bill, if you met a terminating event prior to that July 1 effective date, you were not eligible. For this, if you're a dual enrollment grant student and you lose eligibility prior to that July 1, 2025 date, you're going to lose eligibility permanently moving forward. So essentially, the way I would phrase it at this point, and let me, and I'll preface this comment by saying, a lot of times as we go back and we look at the specific legislation, this hasn't been signed yet by the governor's office, but so we'll need to see it in its final format. But if you lose eligibility prior to that July 1, 2025, you're going to be permanently ineligible.
Got it.
So that was actually a conversation that I was just having with our bureau chief / attorney, and talking about how that impacts those students.
No, that's good. No, that's awesome.
Yeah.
All right, next.
All right, last bill, and this bill is for the Tennessee Future Teacher Scholarship, and it doesn't necessarily impact probably a ton of people on the call, essentially, or on the webinar here, but you may know some prior students who are majoring in education, and this may be something that may essentially help them. If anything, and I just noticed I misspelled governors there. I can't believe I did that. But this bill expands the Tennessee Future Teacher Scholarship. For those that aren't familiar with the program, it's for junior and senior students in college who are enrolled in a education program. And it's a last dollar program. So essentially we look at tuition and mandatory fees, and we deduct the Hope Scholarship. We deduct any need-based aid like the TSAA program that we've mentioned, the Pell Grant, And then anything that's left over is essentially the student's award. The student receives those fundings. They're required to teach in what is classified or defined as a targeted setting, which is either a distressed or at-risk county or a critical shortage subject area. This program is a 5-year pilot. We're in the first year of the program. We've had very minimal participation. Essentially, we had around 100 applicants. And so out of those 100 applicants or thereabouts, we've had less than 10 recipients. And so there is plenty of funding available. And I say that doesn't necessarily mean that the students, as it says there, it allows Western Governors University to participate. And for those that may not be familiar, that is more of an adult it's an online, go at your own pace institution. But if you do have students, like I said, prior students that you know are education majors at MTSU or UTK or where have you, and that they're in an education program, then this may be something that they would be maybe interested in. So it is one of the state aid or piece of legislation that impacts one of our state aid programs, and just wanted to get it out there for you all in case you know of any students. And it definitely encourage participation in the program. If a student is absolutely set on wanting to become a teacher and they are open to teaching in a distressed or at-risk county or a critical shortage subject area, then this could potentially be some financial aid funding for them.
Tim, I know and Sarah, and for those listening, this is a program that we talked about a year ago, basically today, when we announced this. And this is something that we have, because this is for college junior and seniors throughout the last academic year. We have communicated and done outreach specifically with generally education departments on these campuses to make sure that their students were aware of this. I think more information can be found also at College for TN about this program, specifically for those of you that hear Tim and read this slide goes, what the heck is a distress or an at-risk county, or what are the critical shortage subject areas? I believe all that information can be found on College for TN within the future scholarship. Shana, thank you. You're the best for
thank you,
sharing
Shana.
that. Sarah, what now?
I was saying thank you to Shana. I was gonna pull that for everybody, but yeah, that's perfect.
Yeah, and we do, and to your point, Jason, and yes, thank you, Shana. We do have links to the distressed at-risk counties, the critical shortage subject areas. Those are determined essentially by the the critical shortage subject areas are determined by the Tennessee Department of Education. The distressed or at-risk, I think, are done by ECD.
ECD, yeah.
So
sounds good.
Hey, can I ask one more question about that? Actually, I have two questions.
No, go for it.
That future teacher scholarship. One is somebody asked how a student might sign up for the funding or the scholarship. That future teacher scholarship. How would they find that? What's the best place to direct them to?
Yeah, if they go to the link that Shana sent, it will have all the information
about how to apply.
There.
The other one is about I don't know if you guys touched on this, but if they don't satisfy like the service requirements, what happens to the future teacher scholarship?
Yes, great question. So the service requirement is that a student has to teach for 4 years, and for each year essentially that they don't teach, they have to repay TSAC a certain amount for that. So definitely, and I will say this program is essentially what we call a loan forgiveness program. This is Tim speaking. Personally, I'm not a fan of loan forgiveness programs. I think a lot of people believe that they are meant to drive students to become teachers or nurses or what have you. And so, I've never seen any studies that say these types of programs are effective. And so, to give you a short answer, Sarah, if they don't teach for the 4 years, they've got to repay whatever portion they didn't teach.
Got it. Okay. And then just one question. This one is just for me personally. I heard you say, Tim, that about 100 students had applied for it, but there was some low participation with quite a few of those students not ending up being awarded the scholarship. What is there something in particular that's preventing them for that? Is it maybe the location where they're needing to teach? Maybe people are having preferences. They don't want to teach at an at-risk or distressed county. Like, is there a certain reason that so many of those students who are applying aren't being awarded a scholarship?
Yeah, yes, and great question, Sarah. Essentially this program, we're administering this program manually. So we essentially put the applications out there. To Jason's point, we reached out to the education departments, the financial aid officers and offices, and said, hey, here's a new program. So we would get applications for individuals who may already be teaching, or we may get
Oh, I see.
uh, applications from students who didn't meet requirements for one reason or another.
Got it.
So
So they're already ineligible when they begin.
Yes.
Exactly. And so
Understood.
ultimately, if you boil it down to the students who may have been eligible but did not accept the award because they may not have wanted to teach in a distress or at-risk county or a critical shortage subject area, there were a few of those, but not a ton.
Got it.
And I think just given the environment that we're in today and trying to avoid not only student loan debt, but any other type of debt, I think some people for the award amount that they may have been that may have been calculated for them just felt like it wasn't worth committing 4 years for, X amount of dollars, whatever that amount may have been.
Sure. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Tim, thank you as always. One thing I was going to say for the people that are joining us, Sarah, some of which, right, joined us most likely last week, or whether that was 2 weeks ago. I can't keep up when we're doing webinars at this point in time. But one other thing, just to remind, especially if you missed the webinar from 2 weeks ago, where we gave a FAFSA update and some other state aid nuggets. One of the nuggets was about the Summer Hope Scholarship. So very similar to, I know the legislation is what Tim talked about with Summer Promise kind of opening up for our May grads. But Summer Hope, for years, folks, those of you that have been with us for years, you've all known that for students to first receive the Hope Scholarship, that has typically been either in the fall or spring is when you had to take advantage of the Hope Scholarship. But rule changed to allow for example, our May grads to potentially begin using Hope as early as this summer as well. And that's something that changed. And again, because summer is a part of that 23-24 academic year, if you had any students that were looking to get a jump start on their college career, they do have to complete the 23-24 FAFSA by May 15th in order to take advantage of, again, the Hope Scholarship.
Yeah, that same deadline essentially
Yeah.
for the promise that we mentioned earlier. And why I mentioned that to you. But that deadline, Jason, and but typically it's been February 1.
Yep.
So we've extended that based on just all the rule change. And so fortunately, we've given ourselves flexibility in rule to make changes to the deadlines if we deem that appropriate. So our executive director, Dr. Stephen Gentile, is able to have that authority to make those changes if we see fit. So, and I will say, wrapping up, appreciate everyone being on the webinar today. There's my contact information. If anyone has any questions, feel free to follow up. That's my desk number, if we still have desk phones, or which I call it my desk number, but we don't have those. I'll give you my cell phone as well. My work cell phone is 615-476-6069. And so feel free to 6069. I don't have my glasses on, so I'll make sure.
Yeah.
So if anyone has any questions, if I don't answer, please leave a voicemail. I'll get back to you as soon as I can, but happy to take any questions via email, phone call, and help you guys out. So, but appreciate Jason inviting me here again. Like I said, it's becoming an annual ritual for us. And
But stay, because
stay. I'll definitely stay.
we may have others. Rebecca, I see your question right quick, Sarah. How
Oh,
long
yeah.
do students have to complete the service requirement? For example, if someone has medical leave and misses a year. Rebecca, I'm always team from a promise perspective. Satisfy all of the requirements that you possibly can up front, right? And again, in this case, Rebecca, you're asking, well, Jason, Tim, this is a medical leave situation. But if they're able to complete those 8 hours community service, let's say by the traditional July 1 deadline, go ahead and do that. But then if something were to happen where they now have to take a medical leave, that's something to work with the institution, work with us about, potentially an appeal here, but I'll hush for a second, let Tim chime in.
Yeah. And I was just going to say, we delegate essentially the community service requirement to the partnering
Yeah.
organization.
I think that she's talking about the future teacher scholarship.
Rebecca, sorry.
Yeah.
She's talking about the future teacher. My bad.
Oh,
my bad.
yeah.
Rebecca, sorry.
Oh, okay. For the future teacher. Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. You and I went off on you and I were on the same, going down the same long road. So essentially we do allow, essentially a grace period for the student to obtain employment. I believe it's 1 year. And then once they obtain employment, then it does say it has to be 4 consecutive years that the student provides that teaching service. So, but essentially a grace period, I think it is, of a year. It doesn't have to be a year. Obviously, if a student or a recipient gets employment sooner than that, then they can start teaching. So if a student is fortunate enough to receive the award, start and say graduate in the spring, gets a job in the fall at the distressed or at-risk county or in the subject area, and then is able to start, then it's 4 consecutive years. So
I will throw the medical leave part in there. Like, for example, if something were to happen and they were, let's say they had used their quote, I want to say gap year.
Yeah.
Let's say, right, I completed my degree in teaching. I did my quote gap year thereafter, maybe found a job, but Lord forbid, then I got in an accident and I'm on basically another year of medical leave. That then most likely would be an appeal to us, correct?
Yeah, I don't have the rule in front of me, but typically for all of our programs, we've instituted essentially an appeals process, if we will, kind of what you said earlier, Jason, for someone who runs into some sort of extraordinary circumstances and is unable to do that.
Yep.
So
yeah. So Rebecca, like with the young woman you're thinking about right now, that may be something to connect with Tim, connect with me, and we can, we can explore what her next steps may need to be.
yes.
So cool. Sarah, are you ready?
Yes, I'm ready. Talk about some hope verification, GPA verification. So basically we're going to just transition here real quick and talk about reporting hope GPAs and how to verify those. There's really 2 options. And so I'm going to cover the first option, which is really an incredible plug for us to be able to talk about the electronic transcript exchange program. So for any schools on this call who are already using the Tennessee Electronic Transcript Exchange, you are just going to upload your final senior transcripts just like you normally would. So once those transcripts get uploaded, uniform grading policy GPAs should be loaded into FAST within about 24, 48 hours after you're finished uploading. So give it just a little bit of time, but just proceed as normal, upload those transcripts, and then I would encourage you go in there and then check, double check in FAST. So you do not have to manually enter all of those GPAs into FAST if you are already using the transcript exchange. It will do it for you, although I would definitely suggest, obviously, going in and spot checking all of those. And then you can check with your school district to contact check with your school or your district contact to learn when those uploads are planned, just so that we make sure that the timing is good on those. And then some larger districts may upload their transcripts in the summer. So if you do have a student who's maybe needing it a little bit sooner, you're welcome to do that manually. But we can go ahead, I think, and go to the next one here, Jason. So if your transcripts do not list social security numbers, that's okay, because FAST will be able to match it up otherwise, but FAST will look for a perfect match on all of the following data points. You guys can read those: first name, last name, date of birth, and high school code. So we want to make sure, if you don't have social security numbers on your transcripts, that the rest of those things are listed exactly correctly, and then FAST should be able to match them up. And obviously FAST is not perfect, so definitely go in and double check on those. Like I said, wait about 48 hours after you upload those transcripts, those final transcripts, through the transcript exchange, and then you can log in and make sure that they've all been uploaded. So you should be able to see pretty simply if there was a student whose GPA or transcript wasn't uploaded correctly, and then you can just go in there and check those. And that should be pretty simple. If you are not using the Tennessee Electronic Transcript Exchange, it might not be too late for 2024. So if you're listening to this and you're thinking, wow, that would be so nice to not have to manually enter all of those GPAs, you can email Suzette Tully. She's not able to join us on today's webinar, but you can email Suzette, and she can help you get started with the Tennessee Electronic Transcript Exchange. I would encourage you to reach out to her as soon as you possibly can, so that we can try and get all of that instated before it's time to go ahead and upload all of those. But you can also find information about the Tennessee Electronic Transcript Exchange on collegefortn.org as well. And just as a reminder, it is a super, super simple way to transmit those transcripts from high schools to post-secondary institutions. And you don't have to pay for it, which is awesome. So if anybody's interested, please feel free to reach out to Suzette or find more information online on collegefortn.org. I'll go ahead and put that link in our chat if you guys want to look at that too. And it should be able to make your life a little bit simpler, is the hope. No pun intended.
Sarah, awesome job.
Thanks.
I will let you join us anytime on a webinar. You know that. So that's awesome.
Well, thanks.
All right. So, guys, we'll transition into option 2 for some. And then as Sarah alluded to, even for those of us schools and districts that use the electronic transcript exchange, as Sarah said, we always do encourage our counselors to log into FAST, which, just in case you have forgotten, FAST stands for the Financial Aid System of Tennessee. It is the system that replaced e-grants for those of us that have been doing this longer than others. Yeah, as Tim just said, old timers like he and I. But that being said, we do encourage our counselors, once they upload, if they're able to log into FAST, because data is not always perfect. And sometimes students fall through the cracks. We hope our college financial aid partners are there to sometimes catch those that fall through the cracks, but we also encourage our counselors to do that as well. And Sarah, Tim, one thing I in my team always stress is, we get it. Some of you may be done as of June 1st and then come back, say, late July when the new academic year starts back. It's never too late to then access the system then in late July, early August, to make sure all your kiddos are good to go from a Hope Scholarship GPA perspective. Anyways, for those that are entering GPAs or reviewing GPAs through our FAST system, as a reminder, the website is fast.tn.gov. Specifically for Hope Scholarship purposes, remember, if a student graduates with a 21 to a 28 ACT, they're eligible for the Hope Scholarship regardless of GPA. So specifically, the students that need that GPA verification are those students that have a 0 to 20 ACT and a 29 to 36, specifically for that latter group because of GAMS, that General Assembly Merit Supplement for students that graduate, like Tim, when he graduated high school and had a 35 ACT, that 4.0 GPA or 3.75 or better would have qualified him for GAMS.
And you all can't see it, but I'm laughing hilarious.
Guys, as you log into FAST, let me pause here. Talk about FAST for a second. As hopefully many of you have read, whether from me, whether from FAST announcement itself or another TEC TSAC colleague, the system is currently down, right? So right now you're like, all right, Jason, I'm trying to log into FAST. Folks, it's offline because we're finally downloading 24, 25 FAFSA records, right? And the idea is we should be back online at Monday at 8 a.m. As Sarah, you and I in a meeting yesterday, as we discussed, when it officially is back online, ideally Monday at 8 a.m., we will notify all users, high school counselors, financial aid administrators, et cetera, that the system is back online. That said, once it is back up online, if you have forgotten your username or password, we always encourage you, lock yourselves out, meaning you guess at your password until you become locked out. And generally speaking, we do have a team of folks, sometimes myself included, that monitor those locked users, and we will then email you with a temporary password. But as always, if you don't hear from anyone within a 5 to 10 minute period, call our call center staff at that 1-800-342-1663 number. They are typically online between the hours of 8 a.m. and 4:30 Central Time, and they can unlock you as well. Last bullet on this slide, as a reminder, and this has been going on for some years, but because we oftentimes have new counselors, as a reminder, College Board, right, the folks behind SAT, they no longer send test results to state agencies. And that's not just Tennessee, that's a nationwide thing. So just if you are a school counselor that have had students that have taken the SAT and potentially have earned HOPE eligibility or potential GAMS eligibility based upon an SAT result, that is something that you can manually enter into the system. So we're just going to go through a few screenshots of the new system and then specifically the student roster that Josh Moran and his team has built that I have really enjoyed, honestly. But when you're logged in as a high school counselor, you will select, or you'll click on verification and then select student roster. And this is where you'll see your 2024 graduates based upon their ACT test information that's in our system. As you look at your roster, Sarah, look, there's you, there's me, there's Suzette Telly. The idea is basically this student roster, think of it from an Excel spreadsheet database perspective, where the goal is to simply enter that final high school grade point average, right? And then once entered, make sure you check the quote verify button and hit save. And that is how you manually upload GPAs into this system, is by, again, think of it as like an Excel spreadsheet where you're just entering GPAs in a column and then checking that box and clicking save. And that is how you manually, quote unquote, enter GPAs through the FAST system.
Jason, I'll interject real quick and I'll make a plug for our research team, but they are always interested in doing the annual Hope Scholarship or lottery report. They are always interested in as many GPAs and as many ACT scores as they can get. So even for those students who may be between the 21 and the 28, they would still ask. And I understand counselors have very limited time on their hands, but if you happen to be in there or are able to do that, even for those 21 to 28 students, they would appreciate it.
Yeah. And to add to that, so if you have Jason C, that in this case has a 20 ACT, and notice, right, Jason's graduating with a 2.83 GPA. That doesn't qualify him for anything, but as Joseph's just chatted, and you're welcome, Joseph, Joseph would love that information so that when he does the annual lottery report, he knows what.
Message
if we get cancel, we're also going to look at, you can also update the ACT or SAT on the screen as well, right? Again, think of it as a big Excel spreadsheet. And so for like Sarah Marrero, if for whatever reason Sarah's on there, but her ACT reflects a lower score, and she now has retaken the ACT and has achieved, let's say, a 23, that would make her eligible. You can simply plug that information in. Again, this is one of those things, Tim, you said it well. Guys, God bless you. Thank you for all that you do for your students, your families, also selfishly for us. But that being said, like if Sarah had a 22, you don't necessarily have to update that. But what I always have tried to train, especially our newer counselors, is, if Sarah was on there with a 20 ACT, but now she's subsequently, or you now subsequently know that she has a 21, 22, 23, yes, enter that in there, because that obviously impacts her HOPE eligibility. That would make her eligible regardless of her GPA. Again, and simply as you're updating, you can just plug in the date, the score, check that verify box, and then once you're done, click save, and that is how you update ACTs if necessary through the FAST system. This is a common question that I think I get nowadays, and I don't know if my friend Nicole from DCA has joined us today. If you are, Nicole, I know I owe you an email, because it's some of this cleanup stuff that Nicole and I have kind of been back and forth on, or Tim, to be quite honest, Nicole's been emailing about. I don't know if I've quite done the fourth with it yet. That being said, like for example, you log in and you see, look at this dude, Jason C. He's got 3 records. Why is Jason listed 3 times? Take your eyes to the left hand of the screen, SSN. When you see one of his records reflecting the last 4, you and I can assume that Jason's ACT is connected with his FAFSA within FAST. So in that sense, you really only need to deal with that record. And for those of us, I think I would probably be like that this way, where I'd want to, quote, clean my roster. I don't need those other 2 records for Jason, right? So you can remove those records by simply selecting remove students. And notice, like the 2 that say no matching apps, you could check that remove student box at the very end on the right-hand side of the screen, click save, and that would remove Jason's records that we don't need from the system, right? In those instances. Finally, I know a lot of schools this time of year and school districts, they need year-end reports, because year-end reports can be, trying to think of the term here. Sometimes year-end reports, depending on when your district uploads, might not be available by the time you leave for the summer, but they should be ready when you return. So as a reminder, you do have what we call the totals reports, by clicking on reports, then high school, and then selecting high school totals reports. And this is where you can then download for the class of 2024 a report that will list out Hope Scholarship amounts, TSA award amounts, potentially Tennessee Promise amounts as we get on into the fall semester or whatever. But this is how you could download by state program what the class of 2024 will be receiving. As you're reviewing the slides, some of you may be like, well, Jason, whoa, but my class of 2024 is within the 23-24 academic year. Guys, as a reminder, our system is always thinking about when these students will be in college, right? Kind of thinking in terms of the FAFSA that they're completing. So specifically for the class of 2024, once GPAs are uploaded or entered via FAST, to pull that total reports for HOPE or GAMS or what have you, make sure you're selecting the 24-25 academic year when these students potentially will be enrolling and eligible for the HOPE scholarship, and select that 2024 high school year, and then go from there to view the report. Here is an example of the report that once you click view, that you would see, again, student by name, and then the potential award amount that they are awarded or offered in each term. And also reflecting the college that we have listed currently in the system. And obviously this stuff can change, right? And as students ultimately decide where they're going to college, and whether or not they're actually certified their amount.
And one thing I'll add, Jason, to what you said, and you maybe we're going to say it as you were wrapping up, but like Jason mentioned, we've got FAST offline at this point. We're finishing uploading the FAFSA data that we've received. One thing that we haven't been able to do, and it's a process we can't do until we bring the system back online and we have all the FAFSA data loaded, is to award TSAA. So if you go out and run that report within the next week or so, I'm not sure, then you're gonna see that TSAA awards would be 0 at this point. So our goal is to, and it is our highest priority essentially when we bring the system back up, is to look and see how much we can award. We typically will make those awards on a weekend, and so it's a process that we're working on it. We'll work on it at this point, and so we will be doing that as soon as we can.
Sure, I think the only other thing we really need to share is, and I confirmed this with our colleague Robert Biggers earlier. We all love Robert. Robert is the director of our lottery scholarship programs here at the agency. From a FAST perspective, GPAs can, the FAST will quote, FAST will open for GPA entry May 15th, right? So if any of you already have, let's say you're graduating today, and let's say over the weekend, final GPAs are being calculated, those will not be able to be accepted by the system until May 15th. That is when the system will quote, I should not use the word open because, right, it's shut down. I should say it will unlock. I was going to say unlock. No.
It's unlocked. It's fine.
No, but it should be unlocked for GPA entry on May 15th. So
Perfect. May 15th is going to be a big day. Lots of fun things happening.
Yep.
Okay, cool. Well, I don't see that we have any additional questions in our chat. I'm glad that we were able to kind of tackle those as they came in. Tim, Jason, do you guys have any closing thoughts?
Hey, as always, like, I don't feel like I can do a webinar without saying something about FAFSA, right? I think there's a rule at the office now. Like, I can't do anything without saying FAFSA. I guess there's really no update from our last webinar. I will say I have several emails asking about paper FAFSAs. Any word on when they will begin being processed? And the answer is there is no word. I was, can I say, very fortunate. I was actually on a call with U.S. Department of Education leadership and also federal student aid leadership last Friday, and I was able to ask that very question. Is there a timeline right now? Do y'all have any idea when paper FAFSAs will begin processing? And the answer was no. Amanda, to your point, and Amanda and I've worked with a number of her students, and there are still some students that are unable to submit online. But based upon what I heard from FSA and Ed leadership, you know, I've gotten to the point where I feel like if our students are able to submit some way, somehow online, they really need to, even if they did mail in a paper FAFSA. And I know that's not what I was saying necessarily in January and February, but folks, we're again, with each passing day, we're getting closer to the fall 24 semester. And yeah, that's my thoughts about, or just an update about paper FAFSA. I see my friend ask about, do you foresee postponing the promised FAFSA deadline given how many students, quote unquote, did not file or still having issues? Guys, I want to say stay tuned on that. And full disclosure, right? We are very cognizant, and I think especially with me, very cognizant of all these FAFSA issues. So stay tuned. Right now, our deadline for Promise is May 15th. So let's focus on that right now. As a reminder, for our non-Promise students, those that are going to a four-year college pursuing a bachelor's for hope purposes, that FAFSA deadline remains September 1. For Tennessee Reconnect, for our adult learners, September 1 is our FAFSA deadline for those folks as well. And Sarah, as you've heard me say, and Tim and I, whether we were talking about earlier or not, I, for the longest time, have always been this way, right? If a student approaches me, quote unquote, on the street, at a school, at a college, and the first words out of their mouths are, I've not done my FAFSA yet. All right, let's do it, right? Regardless of the date, let's do it. Because folks, remember, there are other programs and monies associated with the FAFSA that are, I think the word is irrespective of deadlines, right? Like Pell Grant. I mean, Pell Grant's one of those programs that if you're eligible, just do the FAFSA. And that's how I've always kind of approached what I do. Again, I get it, right? We're worried about this deadline and that deadline. I get that. But at the end of the day, we just need to try to help our students get this FAFSA done. So stay tuned. Let's focus on May 15th right now, but let's just stay tuned with us. And if there are any updates, Sarah, you and I and Tim will make sure we get those out to our professionals that serve our students. Tim, you got anything to add?
Absolutely.
No, I don't want to expound too much on the FAFSA deadline. So yeah, it's conversations are occurring, but no guarantees. So like Jake said, focus on that May 15th deadline, which is in 5 days.
Yep.
Perfect. Yes. Well, this was great. Thank you guys so much for your help and for your expertise. I always feel like I learn so much whenever I hear you guys talk about financial aid. It just reminds me that there is a lot here. There's a lot here to tackle. So I also want to just say thank you to everybody who joined us today, especially those of you who are working directly with our high school seniors. You guys are absolute rock stars, and you've been putting up with a lot with all these FAFSA changes, and it means a lot to us. Just to know that you guys are willing to learn about these things, to stay on top of them, and then to help out our students. So just want to say a big thank you to everybody. So
yeah.
Well, with that, we're going to go ahead and close. Like I said, this recording will be online. So if you wanted to go back and listen to any of it or share it with a colleague, you're welcome to do that. It should be online either later today or on Monday. And thanks everybody for joining us for this webinar for TN. Have a great day.
Yep.
Thank you, Sarah.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah.